The bad injury luck continues for the Chargers as running back Omarion Hampton is now headed to injured reserve, and it's a devastating blow to an offense that is already missing several key starters.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 10 seasons, but this is our 8th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen. To make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Daniel, when it rains, it pours. The Chargers running back room suffers a devastating blow as Omarion Hampton is going on IR with an ankle injury, and now the Chargers are going to have to scramble to figure things out at the running back position. And that begs the question, with all these injuries, with all these issues, are the Chargers still a playoff team in 2025? And I think one thing is very clear. It's time to see what Andre James can do in the middle of the Chargers offensive line.
Man, especially after the terrible sequence that's been going viral on social media of what happened in the game between Justin Herbert and Bradley Bozeman. But unfortunately, on this Buy or Sell Tuesday, getting into the biggest Charger storylines and overreactions, the biggest storyline today is the Chargers losing another key offensive piece as Omarion Hampton is the second of the Chargers running backs to end up on injured reserve, now down their top two running backs and their top two offensive tackles at the moment. Doesn't get much tougher than that for an offense, and they've already been paying the price, and this is really one they couldn't afford to lose. Omarion Hampton was just starting to hit his stride over the last few weeks, and it was just another, kind of freak thing. A 4th and 2 play that Tyler Conklin dropped the pass. Omarion Hampton was tripped by Frankie Louvu, came up hobbled, never came back into the game, but did seem to be trying to come back in to a certain extent and wasn't able to. Now we know he's going to be missing, David, the next 4 games at the very least.
Yeah, just a devastating blow. The kid just seemed like he was just starting to rev up the engine. Seemed like he was really starting to be a focal point of the offense. He showed what he was capable of doing and felt like he was in line for more touches, for a bigger piece of that offensive pie. And, of course, another horrible injury. And I guess one of the good things is, at least according to Ian Rappaport, he did say that Omarion Hampton should be coming off in just the requisite 4 games, which would put him in line to come back for the Steelers game, because obviously you have to miss at least 4 games, but it could be more than that as well. So just a horrible injury, and the Chargers are going to have to really scramble to figure out how to fix this issue.
Yeah, and I mean, before the game he got injured last week, in weeks 3 and 4, he had 294 yards from scrimmage, averaging almost 150 yards of offense per game, and that's the guy that you're losing on an offense that has already been bad, and has been bad specifically in the second half, where you kind of need a running back like this to be able to try to put teams away when you're in that position. Chargers scored the least second half points in the NFL so far, or tied with the Giants in last place. So that's where the Chargers are at and can't really afford it. He also has become a big weapon in the passing game too. 17 catches over the last 3 games, is tied with Keenan Allen for the second most on the team. And he's just been good. Like, he had a legitimate chance of potentially being the offensive rookie of the year. We'll see what happens with Genty, but he was right there with him. There's not much difference between those guys so far. 15th in the NFL in rushing yards, which is impressive since he only played 4.5 games and didn't really start getting the workload until week 3. 15th in yards per carry, 7th in yards after contact per attempt, and also didn't have much to work with because he ranked 30th out of 44 eligible running backs according to True Media in yards before contact per attempt, yards he had the ball before he was getting hit by one of the defenders on the opposite side. So, and now I think you look at what's next, and I think the problem is, David, is the options on the roster right now are not going to be very inspiring as far as who's taking some of those snaps or most of those snaps.
Yeah, the only 2 guys really that you have left is Kaimani Vidal and Hassan Haskins, who have barely touched the football so far this season. It was Najee Harris and Omarion Hampton to start the year, and basically I think Kaimani Vidal got a couple of carries before this game, and Hassan Haskins got his first touches in this football game, this past game. So not a lot of touches out there for them. They're going to have to get revved up very, very quickly. And it just seems like they have to go make a move. They have to add to this room because what they have in the building right now is certainly not enough.
No, it's hard to feel confident in either of those guys. And I mean, I'm sure Kamani gets signed at this point. But as of right now, he's on the practice squad. Like, they don't even have anybody. Yeah. I mean, and to show you kind of how much they didn't trust those guys, actually, neither of those guys had a carry before this game. Every carry they had, Omarion Hampton had more carries in this game before he got injured than both of these guys have combined all season, which shows you kind of the lack of faith that they had, or just how much better Omarion Hampton was than those guys, because even after Najee Harris's injury, we heard it's going to be a committee approach, and then they literally didn't give it to anybody else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Last year, Kamani Vidal, 34 carries for 89 yards and 2 touchdowns, 2.7 yards per carry. Last season for Kamani Vidal, 3.6 yards per carry on 43 carries, 1 receiving touchdown, no rushing touchdowns. So I know that fans are probably wishing they had held on to Rocket Sanders at this point, but yeah, I mean, I think the point is somebody has to be added into the mix. I'd like to see what Amar Johnson can do on the practice squad, just to see something different, because I kind of know what you have right now on the roster, but it doesn't feel like the answer is there, and you're probably not going to be able to find a 1-for-1 replacement. I mean, I'll just say you can't really at this point, at least not on the open market, right? There's no one that's going to be able to come in and provide you anything like that. But I think that leads to the first buy or sell of the day here from Sayow55, who says, buy or sell with Hampton's injury. The Chargers should trade for Alvin Kamara or make an offer to bring back Rocket Sanders. David, obviously the big name here is Alvin Kamara. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think looking at Alvin Kamara, he's been in the league for a very, very long time. Is one of the best receiving backs in the last 10 years. I think when you actually look at the numbers, I mean, a guy who has caught 50 passes the last 3 seasons before this season, and probably on track to catch another 50 plus this season. 70 carries for 283 yards, 1 touchdown, 3.9 yards per carry. It's solid, it's decent. And then 17 receptions for 77 yards. Nothing spectacular there, at least so far. But Alvin Kamara is a guy that's very, very patient, a guy who has very good vision, who can really exploit the openings in the defense. This guy, if he's got some blocks in front of him, it seems like he's kind of moving in slow motion, but he's not. And I think when you look at some of the best athletes across sports, it looks like they're making it look very, very easy, but they're moving at a very, very high rate of speed. And it's just because they're so good at kind of what they do. And I kind of liken that to Alvin Kamara and his kind of movement skills in space. And if there is a deal to be made here, absolutely the Chargers should be looking at trying to do this, because they need help. They need somebody who can make a difference, who can at least provide some quality touches. And I think with Alvin Kamara, he can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he definitely, raises the ceiling and the floor of that room if you make that kind of trade, just because you know what you get. He's also one of the most masterful players at letting his blocks develop, being able to see the open field and have that kind of open field vision for an offense that's going to have to manufacture some yards at this point with the injuries that they have so far. And it's also hard to go off his stats. I mean, 2 of the last 3 years, 2 years before this, barely over 4 yards per carry, 1 year under, 1 year over. This year, he hasn't hit the 4 yards per carry mark, which is kind of the gold standard of, okay, that's efficiency. But it's hard. He's also in a bad situation. And I think for me, that's probably why I wouldn't do it, just because I don't think Alvin Kamara at this point is going to be able to improve what he has in front of him, or be able to overcome the short-handed Chargers offensive line. Like, running the football is a running back stat, but I can tell you that even with, Omarion's kind of modest yards per carry over the first few weeks, you still knew he was good because he was breaking tackles in the backfield and getting much more than he should have, because there really wasn't much there to work with. I think that Alvin Kamara at this, as a 30-year-old running back, is going to be able to overcome what the Chargers have put out there offense-wise. And to me, this is, they'll never trade again, who's been an inactive, healthy scratch for the Cleveland Browns, nor should they. They've already sent away a 2026 and 2027 draft pick at this. You only have picks in each of the next drafts with no projected picks at this moment. I think what it ends up coming down to, though, is what it's going to cost. Is he going to cost a mid-round pick at this point in his career? I'm not sure, but the only premium picks I'm sending out at this point are for an edge rusher or an offensive lineman that can be signed long-term at a position that you already have a need at, that you would have been probably spending one of those picks on next year anyways. But that's where I would be with it. But I do understand, where everyone's at. There needs to be an urgency right now, because right now it feels like things are spiraling. And I think the biggest question now is, are the Chargers still a playoff team after that 3-0 start that they had? We're going to get into all that and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Every day we make decisions, but on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Playing Prize Picks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just put more or less on player projections, like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown, and you're in the game. I love how quick it is. I've gotten in last-minute projections many times, and my favorite part, Prize Picks just added stacks, so if I want to ride with a player, I can select their pass yards, their rushing yards, touchdowns, all in one lineup. One of my favorite parts about Prize Picks specifically, though, the new injury reboot feature. If your player leaves early and doesn't return, it won't count against you. But there are already projections out for this week. You can go with Justin Herbert to throw for more than or less than 265.5 passing yards, and combine that with Quentin Johnston getting more than or less than 60.5 receiving yards. He's basically been a lock for that. All you have to do, download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after that first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. David, we still need to get into more of these buy or sells, and thank you to the everydayers out there for giving us what you have and what you're thinking about right now, because we know there's a lot going on out there. A lot of overreactions, a lot of storylines to talk about, and maybe some are overreactions because this team does have legitimate issues. But I do want to start with this one here from John Clark, who says, buy or sell, this team could still make the playoffs at 9-8 given the AFC's early deficiencies collectively. It has been a weird year in the AFC so far. Maybe it's a little less competitive at the top of it as far as fighting for that, 6th or 7th wild card seed. Can the Chargers get to 9 wins, 10 wins? That's also a good question, but I do get the point here where it's like, hey, if there was a year to maybe be a little bit down and not be able to get to 11 wins, potentially this might be it.
Yeah, actually, I think this is a great point, and I think something that everybody should be looking at, trying to just keep in perspective, because, yes, the Chargers have lost the last couple of games. Obviously, we all know that, but they're not in a bad spot yet. Like, they're still in pretty good shape. I think you look across the AFC conference, I think there's probably 2 playoff teams that are coming out of the AFC South, right, with the Colts and the Jaguars, who just knocked off the Chiefs, right? I think that's those are 2 teams. I think that right now, at least the way they're playing, the way they're looking, they look like they're heading towards the playoffs. But you look at the rest of the divisions, like it's the Steelers at the top, Bengals at 2 and 3, the Ravens at 1 and 4. Like that's very, very uncharacteristic. But I think that just reminds you have to remind yourself there's a lot of time left. But the way that things look right now, it still seems like the Chargers are in a good spot to be able to make the playoffs if they're able to improve on some of the obvious deficiencies that have really been exploited the last couple of weeks.
Well, I think it's just about getting guys back and not losing more guys while you're trying to get there, right? Because, I mean, you desperately need Joe Walton, Mekhi Becton back. Neither one of those guys are on IR, and they're the quickest 2 ways to get your offensive line better. And those are still possible within the next couple of weeks, especially when you have the Colts and the Vikings coming up after this week against the Dolphins. But I think this is a huge game for the Chargers. I really do. Yeah. I don't know if I'd put it in must-win category for their season.
It's darn close.
Man, it is, because you have Vikings and the Colts after that, and then you'll get the Titans. But, like, how many more losses are you allotting to yourself, right? Because now you already have 2. You still have the Eagles on the schedule. You still have the Cowboys on the schedule, who are dealing with their own injuries and still blowing out the Jets in that game. You still have the Chiefs and the Broncos again, and I think that this team we're seeing right now would not be either of those teams in the rematch with the Wave. Yeah. If they had to face either of those teams this week, I'm picking each of those teams by 7+. That's just where this roster's at right now. But I do see the point. Like some of the normal mainstays are not where they normally are at this point. The Chiefs are 2-3.
Right.
You said, Ravens, Texans, both 1-4. And then there are some really bad teams in the AFC as well, like the Dolphins, like the Titans, the Browns, Raiders, Jets, all with 1 win or less. So I do, but with the bad teams come the surprise teams, right? Nobody thought the Colts and the Jaguars would be this good. Nobody thought the Steelers would be sitting alone on top of that division, kind of uncontested, and it's hard to see how good they are. Then you have a Patriots team who's a little bit up and coming that just beat the Bills, right? As well as what you have in your own division, that's going to be tough. So I do get the point, and I think that is true. You might be able to get in at 9-8 right now, but obviously some things are going to have to go into the Chargers' favor, and they're going to have to start winning games because they're still 6 wins away from that. And right now, these wins are getting harder and harder to find. Let's get to this one here from Athir, who I think is voicing something that a lot of fans are feeling right now, especially as so many key Chargers players continue to get hurt.
Daniel, David, Athir, Overreaction Tuesday. It's time for Ben Herbert to be fired. I'm sorry. I've seen enough. Nobody is healthy. He's not doing enough. This is not what we got him for. Please let me know. Thank you.
Well, I think I actually heard the hot take from Athir heating up in the background as he was giving it. No, Athir, I get it. I mean, I don't think they should fire Ben Herbert today. It doesn't really do much to do it in season anyways, because he's the director of a rather large unit of people that is actually employing, what his strategies are. But I understand it, right? Like, I think the thing is with Ben Herbert is for Chargers fans who have been perennially snake bitten by injuries, you hoped, right? And before him, it was, the last guy that they had, Ravondo, whatever his name was, he was going to be the savior. And the guy before him was going to be the savior. And John Lott, who gave Justin Herbert his worst career haircut, was going to fix things, right? It's getting harder to believe that he's going to be able to fix, what has been a curse for many years for this team. And it's tough because I think the big thing, David, is just, it's not just a lot. I mean, it is a lot of players, especially this year. Not a lot of guys hit season-ending IR last year, and a lot of guys, even when they were banged up, were able to come back. But, I mean, you're talking about Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt and Omarion Hampton, Najee Harris, Khalil Mack, Will Dissly, Mekhi Becton, Darius Davis, Denzel Perryman, Elijah Molden. That's not even everybody. And it's just like, not only are you missing a lot of guys, you're missing the most important guys. And it's just hard because it's like the whole mantra from Ben Herbert was making these guys harder to break. And just in year 2 right now, doesn't feel like they're harder to break.
Yeah, I completely understand that for sure. But also, I think there's a stigma out there where people feel like Ben Herbert has a magic wand that he's going to wave over these guys and just magically protect them from getting injured while they're playing a extremely violent game where they're exerting their bodies to the absolute max, pushing, pulling, cutting, jumping, doing all of these extremely athletic things. And unfortunately, sometimes you push your body past the point in which it is capable of handling the stress that you are putting on it, and that's when injuries occur. It sucks. I hate it. Every fan out there hates it. Every team in the NFL is dealing with injuries, and of course, it is magnified right now because of how important the injuries are to the players, that are supposed to have a huge part in helping this team win football games. And it's, of course you're looking for somebody to blame, but unfortunately injuries are a part of the game. It is horrible, but is a part of the game.
And I understand that, but at the same time, if we're going to hype up Ben Herbert when they hire him and say, hey, the Chargers are hiring the highest paid coach in all of college football, and this guy has a remarkable track record of keeping players more healthy, and then those players aren't staying more healthy, there has to be said, you know what I mean? We can't have it both ways. We can't say, hey, this guy could make it better, and then also just, hey, actually, it's just bad luck.
Yeah, he hasn't, for sure.
The other part is, what is he going to do about Khalil Mack's dislocated elbow, right? Like, or Najee Harris's busted Achilles, or even Rashawn Slater's torn patella tendon. Like, there are just freak things that are going to happen. Now, does it feel like maybe they're making the ankles harder to break, but they're definitely not making the ankles harder to sprain, I would say, because so many sprained ankles for the Chargers so far this year. But yeah, I mean, it's just tough, man. Like it's a really tough situation because so many big time players
It's frustrating.
are having it happen to them. And not only that, we've just seen it for so long, and you wanted to think it'll get better, and many teams are banged up. It does feel disproportionately Chargers, but there's a lot of teams that are banged up. But you look at the Bucs, multiple big time receivers out, multiple offensive line starters out, including probably the best pass protecting left tackle in the game, and they're still winning games, right? And those coaching staffs are getting enough out of those other players to be able to keep things afloat. And I think that's where kind of the focus has to go for this Chargers team now. But I do think part of this is the Chargers not doing enough, right? Like they just, some of it is injuries, but some of it is just personnel and not having the horses. There's a lot of blame to go around. But coming up next, we're going to be getting into if the Chargers 11 wins in 2024 maybe made them a little too overconfident when trying to build this 2025 roster after beating up on a lot of bad teams last year. We're getting into that, and if it's time to see Andre James start at center and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings this same intention to how we craft every model, and it's exactly what the Chargers have been missing. I mean, if the Chargers were like Mazda over the last couple of weeks, they might be 5-0 at this point, but unfortunately, it's been far from that. But with Mazda, you can feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery, and you can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. David, we have more to get into on this Buy or Sell Tuesday. And again, thank you to the everydayers out there for contributing. We had so many good buy or sells that we're not going to be able to get to all of them today, but we see them and we appreciate you guys. And as always, love the fact that you're always making us your first listen. If you need a second listen, make sure to check out the slate they have at Locked On NFL, where you can get kept up to speed with everything going on around the league, with 2 shows a day with Tyler the Madman Roland and my guy Tony Wiggins in the Barbershop on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts from. Let's get to this one here, David, from Big Daddy E, consistent question / buy or sell asker. And he has today for us: buy or sell the 11 wins in 2024 with a cupcake schedule caused Harbaugh and Ortiz to overvalue the strength of the roster. Love the post-game therapy pod, boys. We needed it. And we also needed it. It does help. As much as sometimes we don't want to do that show because we have to be here for the big wins and the tough losses, it does always help after the fact. And me, we're always, getting done being like, man, I do feel a little bit better about that situation now. But let's get back to this, David, because I think I'm buying this, especially on the offensive line. But I think there's multiple places when you look at this roster where you say maybe they thought this position group was better than it was because last year they got to beat up on so many bad teams and so many bad quarterbacks defensively, and an offense won in spite of a really obviously flawed interior offensive line.
I just remember this ringing in my head, this answer from Joe Ortiz, where somebody asked him about his team and he said, "We won 11 games last year, didn't we?" Yeah, exactly. And said it with that kind of cocky arrogance. And now we sit here in 2025 with the obvious issues that we knew about, that were very, very obvious heading into the season, that the Chargers had every resource to emphatically address, and they chose not to. They chose to be penny pinchers when they had the money to be able to go out there and make big impact signings, to be able to bring in higher priced, more sure things. They did not do that. And so, yes, I am buying it. I think that the success that they had in the inaugural season definitely went to their heads a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I've brought that quote up, a couple times in the last week from Joe Ortiz to Daniel Popper, who was asking him after the draft, after seeing free agency and the draft, and asking if he did enough on the interior of the offensive line. And I hear it literally in my nightmares. Him saying, "I thought we were pretty good last year, Pop. 11 wins, right?" As if they won it because of that interior instead of in spite of. And that has been my whole thing since then. And I knew it was going to age poorly. And it has aged extremely poorly. And I think to the defensive side of things, like, yeah, I mean, it feels like they kind of, really emphasized adding premier resources to the offense and not the defense. And I think the pass rush is worse because of it. I think they probably could have done more at linebacker with the uncertainty of what Junior Colson was going to be in year 2. They decided to run it back with Denzel Perryman and Troy Dye. I think there are many places you could look at, but I think the biggest part of this is just they made a conscious decision. If it was between getting Justin Herbert more weapons or getting him more protection, they put their flag in the sand. They drew that line. They said, we're going to go get them more weapons. Listen to the guys that they added that weren't there last year on the offense. Tyler Conklin, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Najee Harris, Omarion Hampton, Trey Harris, Keandre Lambert-Smith, Oronde Gadsden. All of those guys were not there last year. These are the newcomers on the offensive line for the Chargers this year. Andre James, who can't get on the field, and we'll talk about that. And who else was it? Branson Taylor, who got cut, besides Mekhi Becton. They made one obvious improvement, but besides Mekhi Becton, it's Andre James, who's a backup, bringing back Bradley Bozeman and drafting Branson Taylor, who didn't even make the initial 53-man roster and still isn't, right? The thing that makes me sick is just that you could watch what happened. They obviously know more than us. They obviously can see bad play. That's the most confusing part of all of this, is just like, if I can see it, you definitely can see it. And the fact that they actually brought in no competition for either Bradley Bozeman or Zion Johnson and decided, hey, maybe we'll just make Zion Johnson the center, is such a slap in the face to what we all saw last year was such a bad unit. I understand not wanting to overpay. That's what basically trailed Tom Telesco's entire general manager career with the Chargers, was the terrible deals that he gave out, whether it was, to Brian Bulaga, who ended up getting hurt, whether it was to Chris,
Derek Cox.
Oh God, Derek Cox was the first of me. We should have known with Derek Cox
from that deal. Yeah.
Oh my God, though. Like, it's just like the list, like every big contract that they tried to give out. Orlando Franklin is another one, right? Russell Okung actually had like some decent time.
He did,
but that didn't work out really. I mean, there's just so
Travis
many.
Benjamin, right?
Travis Benjamin, but I mean, even like, look, I mean, the last couple of years, you go sign the highest priced cornerback in free agency, and you make the big time move. How
Don't
did
even
that
say
work
his
out?
name.
I won't. You know what? I won't say his name. I refuse to say his name. He's already collecting enough money from the Chargers without getting any from us. But let's get to this next one here from Mondo Ramos. To tie a bow on that point, I understand, not wanting to give out the big contract that's going to come back and haunt you, right? Because the Chargers have had so many of them. But there has to be middle ground between totally penny pinching and bargain shopping and just not improving units. Like, some guys need to be overpaid, or you just have to do better. You can't have no competition for those two guys who played horribly last season. But let's get to this one from Mondo Ramos, who says, buy or sell, it's time to start Andre James at center. David, this is something we were clamoring for last week, and I don't think there's anything this week that changed our minds.
Nope. It's the same exact thing. I want to see it. I think everybody wants to see it. What we have seen out there so far, it is not good enough. It's still not good enough. And with the things that have come out after this football game in regards to Bradley Bozeman and some of the miscommunications, I think it just heightens it even more.
Absolutely. And the part he's talking about is the viral play where basically it's a 2nd and 6 after a Trey Pipkins false start, I believe. They had 2nd and 1 and ended up going to 2nd and 6. You have 4 down linemen and 5 offensive linemen protecting Justin Herbert. You have a slot on the left side of the defensive formation that Justin Herbert thinks is going to blitz. There's also on the right side of the formation, Frankie Louvu, who's also kind of bluffing as if he's going to blitz. Justin Herbert tells Tyler Conklin, hey, if he comes, I don't have protection for him. You are the hot read. I'm going to throw it to you right away if he comes because I don't have anyone to block him. After he says that, Bradley Bozeman shifts the protection to the left side, which is not what Justin Herbert was saying. He was just saying, hey, we can't block that guy. I'm going to you if he comes at me. He was saying, keep it the way it is. Bradley Bozeman shifts it to the left side. You get 3 guys blocking 2 guys on the left side, 2 guys trying to block 3 guys on the right side, and you get a free rusher in Justin Herbert's face, and he has to basically throw away as he's getting blasted. You actually hear Bradley Bozeman saying something along the lines of, gosh darn it, right as he snaps it. It's just, It was so bad. And like, there's been blame put on Justin Herbert for the lack of, protection and being able to identify things. And like right there, you see it plain as day. He sees what's happening. He gets overridden by, a center that was a hot topic at Jim Harbaugh's press conference on Monday. And it's for the worst, right? And it's just hard to not kind of let your mind be like, this is what's been happening, right? That is one play.
Right here.
But it does feel like that's been the case because the Chargers have just allowed so many free rushers where they just can't get it lined up. They can't protect the right guys. They're fooled easily. And I mean, I'm down to see anything else. The Chargers should be trying anything else to try to improve this line right now. And basically, Jim Harbaugh himself said it was a missed assignment by Bradley Bozeman. But speaking of Jim Harbaugh, this buy or sell here from Rob Moore is this. Buy or sell Jim Harbaugh believing he has an offensive line in front of Herbert that will save him. He said that after the last game. He said he had the guys in the building that had the ability to protect Justin Herbert. And it was laughable, right? Because, I mean, at least with the guys they have down right now, I really don't believe that they do, which is the personnel thing, obviously. But at the same time, like, I just don't think it's Jim Harbaugh is ever going to be the coach that's up there just blasting his own players. I think and I hope it's different behind the scenes, obviously, but I don't think you're going to hear him say what you want him to say at that press conference.
Yeah, he's not going to do it. That's just not who he is. I think he's kind of demonstrated that over and over and over again. He's going to be the guy that's going to gas his players up, and he's going to prop them up and put them on a pedestal and always speak highly in front of the cameras about his players. That's just what's going to happen. To expect anything other than that would be kind of disingenuous to what we've seen Jim Harbaugh to be. And so hopefully behind closed doors, he's like, okay, guys, like, this isn't good enough. We got to figure this out. And of course he did say, hey, we got to tighten up at every part of the operation. 100% you do. And I think with this, it's clear, like, changes need to be made. They need to try something to be able to improve what they have. And just to answer the actual question, no, I don't think he believes that he has the right protection because he's seen his quarterback get hit 40 plus times over the course of the last 3 games, get pressured 80 plus times over the past 3 games. It is clear and obvious to anyone who's watching the games that he doesn't have enough in front of him. And Jim Harbaugh has won more football games than I'll ever win or anyone else will ever win in their lifetime, unless you are on that Hall of Fame list like he's going to be. So he knows it. We all know it. I know he believes that he doesn't have the right protection for his quarterback right now.
And the thing is like, as much as Joe Ortiz deserves the heat, especially for the interior of the offensive line that he's getting, I would say the other part of it is it's very hard for me to believe that Jim Harbaugh does not have a gigantic say in the personnel of what this team ends up being.
1000%.
Batman, Robin talk at the beginning of it, whatever, in the offseason, Joe Ortiz, the in-season, it's me. Well, both of those things are failing right now because the in-season adjustments to what you have going on are not good enough, and what you have there personnel-wise is not good enough. And you also don't have an offensive coordinator who's good enough and creative enough to, after, the scripted plays at the beginning of the game, continue to work around the deficiencies of this offense. It's a hydra. It's a multi-level problem. Like, there's not one thing you can pin down. It's all of the above when you're talking about the kind of culpability of the Chargers front office and coaching staff here, and a failure, in my opinion, kind of at every level. And obviously just some bad luck because you've lost your 2 best offensive lineman, your 3rd best offensive lineman's been in and out the entire year, and there's only so much you're ever going to be doing about it, but there's other teams that are doing much more with arguably less. So we'll get into more very soon. We probably will not be here tomorrow. We'll see if any big news comes out, but David has a very late travel day tomorrow, so if anything big comes out, I'll probably do a solo show. But we might have to miss tomorrow, and we'll be back on, pretty much for the rest of the season, going 5 days a week. So thank you for your patience. We appreciate the everydayers out there, especially for getting in on this Buy or Sell Tuesday. We love doing the show with you guys. It's probably our favorite show of the week, unless they're giving us a big time victory, obviously, and doing those kind of shows. But to make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from, as well as finding the show every day on all of our social media on Twitter at Locked On LAC, at Locked On Chargers on Instagram, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page, where you can put all of your buy or sells as well, or call into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924 to get your 30-second Chargers question or buy or sell on the show. We'll be back with you guys at the very latest on Thursday for Crossover Thursday, maybe tomorrow if any big news comes out, because, we will be here if anything does. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.